Today we're taking a look at the tone project Uni-L, and honestly this might be the most impressive limiter I've ever used. Now that's a big statement. I've worked with a lot of limiters over the years and there are plenty of excellent options available today. But Uni-L approaches loudness in a fundamentally different way. And after spending a considerable amount of time with it, I genuinely think that's what makes it so special. Now, I'll be completely honest, this is not the kind of plugin you fully understand directly from the start. The architecture is incredibly sophisticated, the interactions between the controls run deep, and there's a lot of things happening beneath the surface. In fact, if you're looking for a complete explanation of everything this plugin is doing, I highly recommend watching the Warp Academy video on the Uni-L. They did an absolutely excellent job breaking down the deeper technical concepts and explaining the full plugin in detail. For this review, I want to keep it a little bit more simple in terms of explaining the plugin and focus more on what matters when you're actually mastering records. How does it sound? How does it behave? And perhaps the most important, why does it sound different from virtually every other limiter I've ever used? Because every limiter can be a compromise. Push for more loudness and you might lose punch. Preserve transients and you might sacrifice level. Protect the low end and you might lose perceived energy. Maintain transparency and you might leave loudness on the table. Every limiter is constantly making these type of trade-offs. And what makes Uni-L different is the amount of control it gives you over exactly which compromises you are making. And before we get into the plugin itself, it's worth mentioning who's behind it. Tone Project is a boutique audio software company founded by Rune Lund Hermansen, known for creating highly innovative mastering and mixing tools, such as Kelvin, Michelangelo and Baselane Pro. Uni-L was developed in collaboration with mastering engineer Bob Mack, founder of the Subverge Central Mastering Studio, and a highly respected engineer with decades of experience mastering records across a wide range of genres. The combination of Rune's plugin design expertise and Bob's mastering experience is a big part of why Uni-L feels less like a traditional limiter and more like a mastering tool built by people who genuinely understand the real-world challenges of loudness and dynamics. Also, I want to point out that this is not a sponsored video, but I did actually use the trial version of the plugin and ended up being so interested into it and wanting to dive deeper into it and make this video for you. So I did request a NFR license with Rune. So in that regard, full transparency. Now let me explain the Uni-L limiter. At its core, Uni-L consists of 3 separate gain reduction stages and they are working together. It's the slow limiter, the fast limiter and a clipper. Also the clipper can run in oversampled mode. Also, if your CPU cannot handle that, you can just use it non-oversampled or 2 times or 4 times oversampled during working on it. And then there's a very clever button that lets it run at 32 times oversampling if you're exporting your session. Brilliant. Each of those stages brings something different to the table. The slow limiter helps preserve groove, dynamics and musicality. Then the fast limiter is where a lot of the perceived loudness comes from. And then there's the clipper that's handling the transients and can preserve that transient impact while contributing additional loudness in a way that sounds fundamentally different from limiting. Now, most limiters don't give you much control. Uni-L does. And then we get to what I personally think is one of the most innovative aspects of the entire plugin: adaptive look ahead. Look ahead is one of the most important parts of any Brickwell limiter, but it always comes with a compromise. Short look ahead times tend to sound louder, more aggressive and preserve transient impact, but they can also increase distortion. Longer look ahead times, on the other hand, tend to sound cleaner and smoother, but they often soften transients and reduce perceived energy. Traditionally, you choose a compromise and live with it. That's not how it works with Uni-L. Instead, it continuously adapts its look-ahead behavior based on both the dynamics and frequency content of the incoming audio. This is genius. And not only that, but the lows, mids and highs can each contribute differently to that behavior. Now, the result? A limiter that can react quickly when the music needs punch and transient definition, while simultaneously behaving more conservatively and slow when transparency becomes the priority. And for me, this is one of the biggest reasons Uni-L can sound both incredibly loud and remarkably open at the same time. Then let's get into the transients system. For modern dance music, this is one of the most powerful parts of the entire plugin. Instead of treating every peak equally, Uni-L allows important transients to be identified and handled differently from the rest of the signal. You can push them more towards the fast limiter, you can push them more towards the clipper. You can preserve impact and add bite. And because the transient detecting itself is highly configurable, you can be extremely selective about what the plugin actually considers a transient. And another thing I love is how frequency aware the entire architecture is. You can shape what the limiter is listening to. You can define how different frequency regions influence the limiter's behavior. And if low frequency energy is causing unnecessary limiting and destabilizing the low end, Uni-L allows you even to separate the low frequencies from the rest of the spectrum through its low split system. This is super nice. In some situations, that can result in a smoother, fuller and more stable low end without sacrificing that overall loudness that you really want. And despite all of this complexity, Tone Projects somehow managed to make the plugin incredibly approachable. Because I said earlier, this plugin is not a plugin that you understand directly from the start. There's a lot of parameters, and yeah, this section of the plugin makes it genius and super easy to use for everyone, I would say. You don't have to interact with every parameter. If you want, you absolutely can, but if you simply want incredible results quickly, Uni-L includes one of the smartest quick systems I've ever seen. Yeah, you start with a preset philosophy, natural, balanced, full, dynamic, solid or loud, and then you use the intensity control for that specific preset. So what's brilliant about that is that the intensity control scales multiple parameters through the plugin at the same time, allowing you to move deeper into or further away from the processing strategy defined by the selected preset while maintaining that preset's character. For example, if you select the loud preset and increase the intensity control, you're not simply turning up a single parameter. You're effectively pushing the plugin further into that aggressive loudness philosophy, causing the clipping and limiting stage to behave way more aggressively while still preserving the overall intent of that preset. It's an incredibly great working, fast and super smart workflow. And using this and leaving all separate controls untouched will actually already yield excellent results for you. Now that we've covered the philosophy behind the plugin, let's stop talking and let's start listening. Because at the end of the day, none of this matters if the results aren't sounding exceptional. So let's dive right into that. This is how the Tone Project's Uni-L limiter sounds on a couple different tracks. So here we are within the Tone Project's Uni-L limiter. This is how it opens up. I unfolded the controls so you can see everything. At standard it's set to 4 times oversampling, which is great, and I think it's not that heavy on the CPU, which is great as well. As said earlier, you can switch to 32 times oversampling when rendering. Super clever, because then it doesn't demand that CPU power that's needed for 32 times oversampling when you're working, but it does oversample at 32 times when you're exporting. True peak also available in the plugin. That said, the true peak on all meters that I'm using seems to be not completely the same on the left and right side. Also, it's necessary to lower the output ceiling to like minus 0.1 or even a bit lower if you want to have like fully a true peak value that you can trust and that doesn't overshoot. What I love to do is use it without true peak on and use other solutions for handling this true peak after that. Let's just have a listen. This is this sort of Marlon Hofstad type of high energy house. All music again is royalty free, so yeah, I can use it with demos like this without getting any copyright issues. Let's dive right in. So this is already heavily limited music. I'm demonstrating it that way because I want to show you how capable this thing is in handling extreme loudness. You can hear how extremely good the delta is sounding. You can hear that it's really just shaving off what needs to be shaved off in order to get a super clean, loud result. Now, let's get some stuff dialed in. Here you see that I selected the transient headphone icon. What this is doing is it's monitoring the transients it detects. So this is important because in this section you hear that it's not necessarily catching all transients that we want. So let's try to get it a bit more dialed in. And what's also super cool is you don't have to go into this all the way as I'm doing right now, but you can use some specific settings like here, transient detection, look aheads, post smoothing. And all these settings allow you, for example here, slow gain reduction limiter. You can actually tell the plugin how much gain reduction it should maximally do before distributing to the fast and clipping stage. The same here for transient detection. You have sensitivity range. Really cool. This allows for a dynamic sidechain. So what it does is, in the drops there's a specific level that the transients are hitting. Very easy, and you can set it up for that. But then in a more dynamic section, it wouldn't catch those if it's set exactly at the same sensitivity threshold. So what you can do is you can increase this range. You can see it here. Look, when I'm lowering this range, it's basically bringing up the sidechain level of everything under this, just basically gets brought up to here. Therefore it does detect the transients as well. This is why I love this plugin so much. It's literally allowing you for the best possible setting for that specific track. So you can see if I'm enabling the limiter, it's literally clipping the transients in this break. And if you would do this with a normal limiter, like a very fast limiter or a clipper, if you would say, okay, I'm gonna clip the transients of those breakbeat drums, okay, you can do that. But then if that setting is static, which it will be with a clipping plugin, on the drop it will cause complete distortion because it's set at a way too intense threshold level. So you would need to add automation, which you don't want to do because it's just not optimal, and this is way faster and more precise. Not more precise, automation is always more precise, but this does it in real time. And that's exactly why this plugin works so greatly, because it adapts and it allows you to tell the plugin, okay, adapt more towards this way, adapt more towards that way, don't do this. And basically you are the CEO but the plugin itself does what it thinks is best at that moment. You're just telling it, okay, this is the direction and the philosophy that I want you to follow. That's super extreme and not a real world scenario. If I would want that loudness, I would go a different route. But just to show you how capable it is, let's go over another more deeper track and try to get a more natural sounding setting going. also so cool. You can go 100% auto and it just grays out that button. You can go 0% auto, then you are literally telling it what to do, and anywhere in between. And then you basically have a mix of automatic behavior and custom setting. Here you see it. Really super cool. So this is the look ahead, you can see it here. And then here are the 3 bands. And these are actually not bands, they're literally only for the sidechain. So you're not dealing with crossover filters here. It's not actually making, like cutting the signal in 3 bands. It does do split the low band at 100%, and then it's a multi-band limit there. Anywhere under 100%, it's still a mixture, and at 0%, it's fully wideband. And here you're basically telling it, okay, this is the sort of look ahead I want for this section. A slower look ahead time is cleaner, and a faster look ahead time is more aggressive. So if we, for example, would go all the way to 0, this is how it would sound. And with that long look ahead time, you can directly tell that it becomes super clean. So you're basically telling it what's the sort of look ahead I want for this section, and then internally it's processing and taking a look at all your settings and using them to calculate the best wideband look ahead time for that moment. So the look ahead time actually is continuously changing. Here, when the break is playing, for example, the look ahead will directly change. Look. This is next level. Longer look ahead time, cleaner sound. But you need also loudness. And you also need to deal with different sections differently. So on the drop, it has a longer look ahead time. Therefore, it stays clean while it's actually doing this. Like if I'm here, look, this is the gain reduction it's doing on here. That's abnormal. I would never do that on the master. -5. And then the slow look ahead ensures that the signal stays clean. But then on the break, it goes into fast look ahead because there it's not needed to have that slow look ahead. So it stays beautifully open on the drop, on the break, and on the drop it just makes sure that it's staying clean. Hear that top end crisp. I just dialed that in with the settings for the look ahead and the transients. Literally clipping, hard clipping those transients. And then I'm just shaping that tone. It feels like a better mix record. It feels way more solid and crunchy, but in that good, crispy, sort of punchy way that is super pleasant to hear. Now, let's end the clipper at 32 times oversampled. It sounds so clean. Let's just have one more before after example here. Also, before everyone is telling me, yeah, you got to normalize these examples. No, you don't, because it stays at around the same peak level. Of course, it jumps up a little bit because I'm not catching true peaks, but this is a limiter. It's already coming in super hot. Yeah, so if you're setting your own preset, then this kicks back to the start again. Alright, some techno. Let's make it sound super loud and in your face. Unbelievable. I didn't set up anything specific. Just used the plugin at loud 50% standard. Pushed up 4.2 dB. Listen to how good this limiter sounds. It's really amazing. Mind-blowing. This thing sounds so good even if you don't exactly know how to set it up. Yeah, like I showed you, like the more complicated stuff with getting the dynamic transient detection, the adaptive transient detection dialed in with the sensitivity range, stuff like that. It allows you basically everything. Like soften is the way it reacts to the transients, and if it's more aggressive or more soft, and then you got weighting, so it's giving more priority to energy, so it reacts more heavy. Everything, all these sort of stuff you really don't have in different limiters, and you don't specifically need it, but having it is really nice, and I think it's a game changer. Also release shaping, for example, how your curve of the release is being shaped. Also the stereo linking works so great. You can do it on transient and release, but I never saw the linked lows on a different limiter. Maybe there is some limiters that do it. I didn't see it. For example, with Ozone Maximizer, this is not an option. But it makes sense. If you want to have life and loudness in your master, it can sound really pleasant to have not completely linked, especially transients, but also release. I find when it's fully linked, I find masters to quickly lose life and energy and groove. However, if you unlink it a little bit, that's great. But you don't want stuff in the low end to trigger it. Not that there is a lot of stereo information in your low end, but you want to have that locked in focus and tight in the middle. and retain its place in the stereo image, like it needs to be locked in. So therefore linked lows, and then the crossover point for that is here. Super smart. So you can listen here to your low end. And that's what stays linked during gain reduction with this limiter. Really clever, and yeah, overall I think this is well, this I didn't even see. It gives you like quick. That's cool. Not per se necessary, and yeah, as said earlier, I'm not using the true peak function. I spoke to Rune actually about this, and he told me that it also depends a little bit on how you measure the true peaks. However, I cannot say that the most common ways of measuring it are measuring the same as the plugin, which they do with other limiters, and therefore right now I prefer other limiters for the true peak part of the limiting, also because it measures differently on the right and left side. So I see this more as like a loudness lifter with slow, fast and clip, and then do the true peak if you need true peak at all, of course. But yeah, that's how I love using the plugin. Alright, last example. Let's go for a more dynamic approach. The mix is already pretty slammed, but let's try and just give it that final 1-2 dBs of gain reduction. So now it's mainly fast limiting, not even clipping, but I think the drums can be clipped a little bit on their top. This, by the way, the fast limiting clip transient button, look, it still is doing fast limiting and clipping if you put them at 0. You can basically say, alright, it's not, I spoke to Rune as well about this, it's not an exact science, so putting here 2 decibel doesn't mean it's literally doing 2. But it does allow you to give it somewhat of a direction of distributing that fast limiting gain reduction to the clipper. So in a realistic situation, what's the way that it works is that you're doing gain reduction, for example, in this drop, and you're saying, okay, I want more of that fast limiting action distributed to the clipping stage. And intensify the clipping stage. So it's basically like a sort of boost. So what I also showed you in the techno example, like you can literally like give the transients a more crispy feel, and this is really super cool, and a different approach than a normal limiter that just needs to sound as clean as possible. This thing can do that 100%, but if you want a little bit more final polish on your transients, this limiter can definitely take care of that as well. So yeah, that's how the limiter sounds. This is the Tone Project's Uni-L mastering limiter. What a beast, extremely amazing. This plugin just keeps impressing me. It's really such a great plugin, and I love how it uses technology because it's digital and I love my analog gear, but some digital processes are just really genius, and I think in combination with like the most powerful analog processing methods and that digital elevation where some smart things are possible that are just not possible analog wise, I think that's the best of both worlds, and that really yields the best sounding masters. Now, after using Uni-L for a while, its greatest strength, I think, isn't simply that it can achieve extreme loudness. Its greatest strength is the way it achieves that loudness. The amount of control it gives you over the entire loudness generation process is unlike anything I've personally experienced ever before in a limiter. And that's why, for me, the Uni-L completely separates itself from the competition. Because loudness never really was the difficult part. The difficult part is how that loudness is being achieved. You want to achieve that competitive loudness while preserving clarity, punch, depth, width, energy, groove and emotion. And in my own workflow, most of the heavy lifting has already happened long before that final limiter stage. Through mix optimization, high-end analog mastering processes like parallel compression, analog transformers, analog EQs, saturation with tubes, mid-side processing on the analog end, and of course clipping the analog AD converter. And once it hits that limiter, it's there to truly present the master. It's not there to create the master, and that's a really big difference. And exactly that is why the Uni-L has impressed me so much. It gives me more control over that final presentation. More control than any limiter I've personally ever used. And in fact, at the time of making this video, I genuinely believe that this is both the best sounding and the most capable limiter I've ever worked with. Not simply because it goes louder than everything else, but because it gives me unprecedented control over how that loudness is achieved. For me, that's the real innovation. Tone Project really delivered a next level plugin, and it feels less like using a limiter and more like designing the behavior of a limiter clipper specifically for the record that you're mastering at that moment. And for a mastering engineer, I think that that's exactly what you want. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what's your favorite limiter and if you already have used and tested the Uni-L for yourself. I'll get you in the next video. Goodbye.